Lesson 12. Dates. More times than not, we will want to split our data based on dates. This is especially useful if we are trying to do some sort of time series analysis, like looking at sales history for year-on-year or month-on-month comparison reasons. That being said, there are two circumstances in which we will use dates when SQL coding. The first use case is when there is a date column in the database we want to transform. For example, say we want to look at monthly sales history, but the data is stored at the daily grain. Therefore, we would need to aggregate accordingly. The second use case is when we want to compare a date stored in our database to a date we have in mind. This is typically used as a filter in our where statement. For example, say we want to look for all sales after the 23rd of March. So before we dive in, let's quickly revisit functions. If we recall from our previous lessons, functions transform data in a column and always reside in the select portion of the query. Essentially, the way we tell SQL to do this is by first putting the function's name followed by open brackets. Then inside the brackets, we typically include the column name for the data we want to transform, and then we close the brackets. Lastly, we usually want to add an alias since our functions create a new column in our output, and having an alias makes the output easier to read. Now moving back to dates, we use the date format function to transform a date column, and please note this function takes two inputs. The first input is a column we want to transform, and the second is the way we want to format the date. As the second input has to be expressed as text, we will always use quotation marks. Shown here is a table outlining all the possible formatting options we have at our disposal. This table is readily available on the internet, so it's never more than a Google search away, so don't feel the need to commit any of this to memory. And either way, you'll pick this up through practice. So now that we've had a quick glance at the various ways we can format a date, let's run through some examples. Starting with the 21st of March, 2017, let's look at the different ways we can format this date. Using the date format function, we put in our date column a comma, then open quotes with the format we want. In this case, we use %Y to get a 4-digit year, then a dash, %m to get a 2-digit month, another dash, and a %d to get a 2-digit day. And that's it. Now, say we just want the month. To achieve this, we simply remove the %y and the %d, leaving only the %m, and there we have it. Well, what about if we wanted the month and what day of the week it was? Keeping our %m, we add a dash, followed by %W, and we get the month and day of the week. Essentially, what we have done is created different ways we can group our data together. This is super useful for analysis, as we will see later on in our lesson. Let's now take a look at how we would compare a date stored in our database to a string. This is where the function string_to_date comes in handy, which will enable us to select only the dates that meet our criteria. For example, any dates that come after a specific day we have in mind. To do this, we need to do a few things. So in our where statement, we need to tell SQL we want to compare a date column to some value. We next put in our string_to_date function and specify the date we are interested in comparing to, and then tell the database how we were formatting that date. This now allows us to compare the date we have in mind to any date column in the database. Simple as that. And just like our date format function, we use formatting to tell SQL how we formatted the date we entered in as our first input. Let's now have a look at a few examples. Suppose we want to express the 25th of March 2017 as a date. We do this using the string_to_date function by typing out in quotation marks 2017-03-25. We then add in a comma followed by the expression. So as we have a 4-digit year first, we will use %Y, then we add in our dash, then a 2-digit month, so we will use %m, followed again by another dash, and finally %d for a 2-digit day. And that's it. However, say we just put in the %Y, what would happen? Well, this would cause our query to error out because the date string you are passing the function does not match the expression, which in this case would be a 4-digit number. To correct this, we would have to simply put in a 4-digit year, as shown here. So now that we've learned two very powerful tools to deal with dates, let's put on our category manager hats again and think through some of the use cases and how we can put these tools to work. Say we want to look at total sales by week, when product selection was created by date, or the total traffic to our site by week or even month or quarter, whatever we want really. Let's now go ahead and put these tools to use in a live scenario. For this example, let's find the total units sold by day of the week. Essentially, are most of our sales on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, etc. So first, we need to find what table holds this information. And as we will remember, the shop order item table has a column that stores the date at which a purchase order was created, as well as the quantity column, which gives us the units sold per order. Now we need to find a way to convert our order dates to simply days of the week. So quickly flicking back to our data formatting sheet, we see that the format we need to use to get days of the week is simply %W. Now, moving over to our playground, let's first try and pull all orders. So we do this by simply typing out select and then the column created, followed by sum of the quantity column. Let's give that the alias total units to make it a bit easier to read. We next want to tell SQL to pull data from the shop order item table, and let's lastly group by the created column, as we will have the sum function in our select statement. If we now run this query, we get the data we want, but not exactly in the way we want it. To get the orders grouped by the day of the week they were ordered, we'll need to transform the created column into days of the week using the date format function on the created column. So going back to our query, we quickly type out date format created, and for our format, we will use %W for days of the week. Let's also give this column an alias day. And lastly, let's not forget to change the group by portion of the query, or our results will not aggregate properly. Let's now hit run, and there you have it, sales by day of the week. So now that we've looked at orders by days of the week, can you now tell me what day of the week is the most popular for customer browsing? Or more specifically, what days of the week have the most impressions? Good luck! To solve this challenge, we first need to find what table stores our customer's browsing history, or as we know it, website impressions. So flipping over to our schema, we see that we can use the shop impression table to get impressions data. In this table, we know that the date an item was seen is stored in the created column. Therefore, we can count the number of rows per day to get the number of impressions, since each record is stored as a single impression. And flipping back to our date formatting chart, we'll remember that the format we use for day of the week is %W. Let's now head over to the playground and get to our answer. So using pretty much the exact same structure as we used in our previous query, let's quickly type out select, created, and count the ID column. We'll then select the data from our shop impressions table and then group by the created column. If we now run this query in this format, as with our last query, we get the data we want but not quite in the way we want it. To get the output in the way we want it, we will again need to transform the created column using the date format function. So let's type out date format created, and for our format we will use %W, and let's not forget to change the group by portion of the query with the same syntax or the results will not aggregate properly. So that looks right, so let's go ahead and hit run, and there you have it, impressions by day of the week. And with that, we conclude our course on SQL. I want to thank you for watching and remind you that the best way to learn is to practice, practice, and then practice some more. So please feel free to go back to some of the lessons that you found a bit trickier and try them again to help solidify your understanding of the different methodologies. And as always, don't be afraid to experiment on our database using different techniques in combination. Thanks again. Bye.